Hello, friends. This is Rhonda Van Norman with Ranch Horse Resource, bringing you a little bit of tackroom talk from the sagebrush of northern Nevada's ranching country. There's a big difference between just getting a horse to cross a creek, however best you can, and preparing your horse to cross it smooth. For a lot of us, getting across is just enough. And shoot, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you watch good horsemen, keeping things smooth is something they all seem to have in common. Today, Ty Van Norman is here with us while I pick his brain about crossing water smoothly. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with what happened to me the other day. I was riding a horse that hadn't been outside too much, and I was trotting along behind you, Ty, and we were just going out through the meadow. Your horse hit the ditch with a little bit of water in it. There wasn't too much water, a little bit of water, and just kind of trotted right through it. And I assumed mine would just follow him because I was kind of right behind you. And when I got there, he veered off to the left, so I blocked him. And then when I redirected him where I wanted him to cross, he got halfway through it, and then he took a big leap and came out the other side going faster than he needed to go.
To me, it's all about straightness. So straightness comes 15, 20 feet ahead. So you have to be thinking ahead. So like if I'm on a colt and I know there's a ditch coming up, I'm thinking about straightness. So straightness to me is staying between your hands and your legs. That horse needs to. So it's really hard for a colt to stay between your hands and legs if your hands are together, because it's real easy for him to wander side to side and you have no way to block him. So I'll get my hands pretty wide and maybe down low. And a lot of times a horse is no different than like getting in the horse trailer. They need to look down at where they're going to put their feet if the terrain's changing that drastic, as in a ditch or something. If that horse is approaching that ditch, he might be going straight, but say he's going at a faster cadence than he's going to be able to handle getting through that ditch. You know, he's either going to leap when he gets there or he's going to stumble through it, or he isn't even looking at the bank or anything, at the fact that there's a major change in the terrain. Then I'll get my hands wide and I'll try to start working on bumping his head down. My hands wide, it's kind of like putting him in a cross tie, I guess. So I'm already blocking before I get there so that he lowers his neck to where it's saddle horn height or a little lower, so that at least he sees where he's about to have to put his feet. And then that way, if he wants to balk, we balk straight at the deal, not diving side to side. I'm already blocking him as he steps to the ditch. Then once they figure out that they can just drop their neck and trot right across a spot like that, it's just another way to have him stay between your hands and legs and go straight.
Ty, tell the listeners some ways you prepare your horse ahead of time and maybe a little of your mindset that in turn helps the horse cross an obstacle controlled and with a lot of cadence.
I don't know, like I look for gaps between sagebrush to ride my colts through to get them, and like that's a prepared thing too. So it's no different than crossing a ditch. You're trotting through the brush to go somewhere. You're headed to do a job. I'll set it up so I can send them between two big pieces of brush or a rock and a piece of brush or something like that as I'm going. It's not like I'm constantly doing that, but if I set those things up, then when I need it somewhere later on, when I need to get somewhere, that horse understands that when I shorten things up and get my hands wide, he needs to get collected, shorten his stride, and drive to that spot. I'm going to use that in the cow work. I'm going to use that in the roping. So those little things like that, preparing to cross a ditch, preparing to go between two obstacles, all those things are working towards getting that horse in my hand, shortening his stride, so I'm in control of his body parts when I need to put him to an exact spot so that he's more useful to me when I need him. And I'm not saying I'm working on that constantly, but I'm working on it especially during the day. If you're going out to do a job, you can't be training on them all the time. But those are little things like that. I'm headed somewhere. Like if we're trotting and going somewhere, we're going to be trotting and going whether I'm not thinking about nothing or whether I'm thinking about something. I just as well use those moments to help my horse get better. Because how do I know later on in the day that I'm not going to need that? And if I didn't work on it getting there in the morning, then I'm just going to be that much farther behind.
Give us the ideal situation of the young horse in a snaffle bit approaching a creek that they might otherwise not want to cross and what that might look like.
Well, for me, I'm going to start. I know the ditch is coming. I should be able to see it unless we're just flat flying. I'm going to start feeling that horse, see what his tendencies are. Like, is he wanting to lean to the right or the left? Is he already thinking about pulling one way or the other instead of staying straight at the crossing? If he is, I'm going to start dealing with that before. I'm going to get my hands wide and kind of bump him down a little bit and maybe even drive him into the bit a little bit. He finds his spot where his head's comfortable and he can look at the ground in front of him instead of having his head up. So I'll start to prepare them so that they're looking at what the object is. And it seems like once you can do that, then they start seeing those spots where they can go through too. You know, more than likely, I've already done that going between two pieces of sagebrush or something like that, where out of the blue, I just got a hold of him and blocked him and drove him so that he starts seeing those little gaps, those little trails, those little spots where he's confident about going through them because I'm blocking one side or the other, and it doesn't have to be drastic. It's just that he knows that my hand's here and my other hand's here, and he needs to drive forward. If you need to work on it, like if they're kind of bad about water and they just want to get there and then lunge or something like that, we might go back and forth a couple times till he actually starts stepping down into the water and walking out of it. If you take time to do that a few times, then it makes the next crossings a lot easier and a lot easier. And I know, like, young people, they don't mind if they jump it or whatever. But the older you get a bad hip or a bad back or something like that when they decide to lunge across there and crash it down on the other side. Yeah, that might not feel very good.
Yeah, I was talking to some young people the other day, and they were actually trying to get their horses to jump across with a lot of enthusiasm, as if it were a race, and get as high and go as far as they could. I was kind of cracking up because I thought, man, the goals of riders are really different, because I don't think that would have been my goal.
Well, then you think about that too. I've been to places where there is no crossing, and it's about a 3 to 5 foot jump across that. Sometimes there is no way to step down and cross it. You've got to get a good run at it and hang on kind of deal. So that also has to do with riding one straight, getting them to where they trust you to send them straight. Because if they get up there and balk side to side, you're probably going to crash down into it or get a crooked jump and fall, slip a hind leg coming across the other side, or just something. But when they get to where they trust you going straight and you can send them, then whether you want to walk down into it and walk up the other side or need to jump a spot, they know how to get straight and how to prepare themselves to go.
Ty, I really appreciate how you ride with so much precision and preparedness. You think ahead and you help prepare your horse for the next move. And I can see how when you come to a ditch or a crossing, how you're thinking ahead, like whether you need to jump it or to go through it at the speed you choose, and you help set that horse up for that. But there's times I know on certain horses, maybe not experienced as the next, that come, even though you prepare them, they're flat out balking at the preparation and they're having none of it. Tell us a little bit about those times.
Well, hopefully you've prepared them before you have to actually go do a job, but they're going to balk at something it's probably started earlier in life. Most of our horses are raised outside, so a ditch or water or something like that's not that big a deal. Where I run into it is if we have a horse that we bought somewhere else or we're riding we don't usually ride horses for a lot of other people, but that we got from somebody else. They just weren't raised crossing water or ditches or out on the range, I guess. Yeah, sometimes you got to make things pretty difficult in order for them to see the relief or the release in where they're at, or where they need to be. I don't try to go overboard, I just try to do just enough to get them to start thinking about crossing. So I'll have to build up that way too. So like if they'll just stand in, maybe at first, if they'll just stand in the spot you want to go, maybe they have a hard time even getting up there, and you just keep blocking them, working them up there until they just want to stand there. I might just stand there and pet on them a little bit and then ask them to go forward. If they want to just get to where you can build on that, you might wind up creeping across or down into the ditch or whatever, one half a step at a time. And then usually those are the horses that are going to leap across when they get down there. All that's good for them. But if you just try to cram it down their throat right off the bat, like you need to make that ditch be the good spot in a sense. So they're going to get a lot of pressure one way or the other, whether I got to take the tail of my rope down and tap them or a split rein or something, because sometimes kicking on them just gets them to holding their breath and just kind of taking the pounding, I guess, from your feet. So I got to change it up a little bit. And honestly, it kind of depends on where you're at and how you're doing things. Maybe that's maybe just a little bit of change and then go find someplace else to cross or go around or something for that time or that moment might be a better plan. And you know something you got to work on at home and set it up there. One good thing to practice, I never really realized this until I wound up doing a trail riding little clinic for some people one time. And I just they wanted a trail course, and I just took a piece of plywood and threw it on the ground. It's amazing how much that horse has to work at stepping onto a piece of plywood and crossing it. And I guess it'd be the same with the tarp. So that's something a guy could work on at home in the corral or something, or after you got done riding, catch your colt and go right across the tarp or a piece of plywood or something too. That's going to be the same process as getting them across that ditch, but you don't have the depth of it. But it's still a trust issue where you have to add some pressure and block until they start building into those steps going forward. If you're out going somewhere, sometimes it doesn't matter. You just got to do what you got to do to get the job done. So it's one of those deals where if you need to apply more pressure and you don't have time to fix it if they leap across, a lot of times they'll do that too. And the next one, they won't jump near as high. And the next one, they won't, they just get. So I've had it work both ways, where I worked at it and made it good. And other times where I didn't have time to do that, we just got across it. And the next one we got across, and pretty soon it was less and less and less of jumping or leaping or whatever. Sometimes we can hinder things by thinking they need to be done a certain way. So we apply pressure. We apply pressure or think it's necessary. I'm big on myself anymore in the last few years. I'm big on instead of having the mindset that, they got away with it, you can't let them get away with that. I'm big on let's just stop here and start over again. Stop and start over. Because if they can't even get that part, then they're not going to advance any farther. I mean, they're just not going to. If the horse is too tired and he's mentally shut down, or he's too fresh and he can't pay attention, then those are not good learning spots. But most of the time people get them too tired and they can't pay attention. So you're better off just to stop and start over the next day. They didn't really get away with nothing because you already shut their brain off. So if you want him to remember anything, you got to catch him when his brain's working.
That's all good information, Ty. Maybe next week we can talk about a horse that kind of wants to buck or run off after you jump a ditch. I know that can be a common thing for some reason.
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, my dad mentioned that He just warned my brother and I one time when we were riding. He's like, now you watch it when you come up out of these washes. Some of these horses will try to take some jumps with you. I've remembered that ever since, because it wasn't too long after that sure enough, he was riding a pretty nice horse that he was a younger horse, but he wound up winning a bunch of stuff on him afterwards. But that horse did. We come up out of a big wash, and when my brother and I got to the top of the wash, there was a lot of sagebrush there, and it was just sagebrush and dust, and we could hear that horse like bawling. He was bucking with my dad somewhere where we couldn't see him. There's too much brush. And then pretty soon he come out of the dust trotting back and picked us up, and we went off. But
Man, Ty, I wished I'd had this episode before I was riding my young horse the other day. But I'm sure I'll have another opportunity. You know, I never get tired of learning and refining horsemanship. It's sort of like a game to me. And it never gets old when you look for more and more ways to get the results you want. Well, if you found this episode interesting, then be sure to tune in again next week when we talk about the other side of the ditch, when things can even get less smooth. Your horse might end up bucking or taking off, but let's go over some things that we can do to prevent it and to stop it quick when it happens. Until then, have a great week and enjoy your ride.